Hey everyone, welcome to tonight's conversation at Inside IIM. My name is Oshin and I'll be your host for tonight. Since XAT is 2 days away, here are some last minute tips by a XAT 2021 topper to remind you of the things you must do at the last moment, an important time to give your best on the exam. So this is Archit I have here, and you can see his very high percentile on the screen. So thank you so much, Archit, for taking the time to join me today. And before we sort of get into the tips that you'd like to share, why don't you tell us a little bit about maybe your background and your previous XAT attempt?
Hi Yoshi, thanks for having me here. Hi everyone, I'm Archit. I'm an engineer and I come with about 2.5 years of experience. I have worked in I've worked in digital marketing as well as currently I'm working in management consulting. I'm a mechanical engineer by education from MIT Manipal.
Got it. And I like how you very politely skipped your XAT percentile, which is 99.9022. And so thank you so much, first of all, for joining us. Because you've taken it last year as well, let's get to the elephant in the room directly. And let me ask you, what are the tips you would give for folks who are going to take their XAT this Sunday? Last minute things to keep in mind, things that you think are important at this time.
Sure. So I think so. This is again. Please take everything I say with a pinch of salt. But from what I understand is that XAT is different from CAT because there's no sectional time limit. So I believe the first thing you need to have is a very good assessment of your strengths and weaknesses vis-a-vis each section and the type of questions that come in each of them. Uh, to throw an example, I believe that quant is my strong suit. However, in quant, I believe that PNC and geometry, I don't like. So I always have a strategy in which I make sure that I don't attempt PNC geometry questions at first at all. The primary reason for that is that the idea is to maximize the to go through each of the question in the paper. Whatever you find easy, doable, just get it done with, and then if when you have time, tackle the tough ones. So if any place there's even a minute possibility that this question might somehow trigger you and take time, you might not be able to get it right, leave it. Hmm. That is the first thing. Secondly is having a clear strategy of time. So see, the problem is now you don't have any sectional timing here, but you have, when you want to get selected, you need to have you need to have to clear all the sectional percentiles. So you need to clear the sectional percentile, you need to clear the overall percentile. Now, if we get 165 minutes for 75 questions, it's roughly comes around to 2 minutes, 12 minutes, 2 minutes, 12 seconds for each question, ideally speaking. That in itself is definitely tougher, not just tougher than CAT in terms of that you need to finish the test in the given time period. So essentially, all the management entrance tests from my viewpoint are like athletics. Like if I tell you to run 100 meters, everyone will do. If I tell you to do it under 30 seconds, it's a difficult job. So that's what the game is. You need to learn how to get it done in under 30 seconds. Similarly, what happens is 165 minutes in total you're given, everyone plays to their strengths. So if I'm good in quant, I'll maximize my score in quant while balancing how much time I spend there. So here I need to just, my bare minimum is in the other two sections is to qualify for the cutoff. The third one is where I'm trying to score high enough so that the overall becomes bigger. That's typically, as far as the pattern of CAT goes, DILR is the worst for everyone. Half people like quant, half people like verbal. That's a typical, like you can say, distribution of strengths and weaknesses. In that, I believe it is very important to have a clear plan about how much time you're going to spend on each section. A, so that you can play to your strengths. B, so that you get to get to aim for the balance of percentile so that each sectional cutoff you're able to finish that off. That's also equally important. So have a very good assessment of what your strengths and weaknesses are, and it's be very honest with yourself, however harsh you might sound, that this is your strength, this is a weakness, you don't need to touch that. Similarly, the discipline to adhere to the time. This is sort of like a sunk cost fallacy in that sense. I start with verbal. I go to the verbal section. I see the poem. No, leave it. Go to some question, something. LR. I'm doing I get to a LR set. Now I know that there's say 5 minutes left. I'm halfway done through the problem. Again, the sunk cost fallacy kicks in. 5 more minutes. हो जाएगा. Let's karo. You don't know if it will happen. Say it takes 5 more minutes. It goes down and you don't solve it. You solve it, we're fair enough. If you don't solve it, gone. So that sunk cost fallacy, you need to have the discipline. Even like keep that solved portion of the paper like somewhere around, so that next time when you if you have time, you revisit it, you can start relatively closer to where you were, had progress, but don't go beyond that. Another thing here is when I started doing it, I what I did was I was very sure of the fact that whatever poem is going to come, I'm not going to attempt it. Whenever DM is there, in any case, even if the case is easy, but the question is difficult, forget about it. I have to play safe. That's where I can logical. Okay, probably I can go DI. I can go well. Quant again, as far as it's not geometry and not PNC, good enough. So this is certain places where I feel that it just you need to. I devised it somewhere around half an hour I left. So once it's 135 minutes, I somehow carved out a rough strategy as to the time I would spend. And in that, I just assigned that, okay, quant, I'm going to assume that the time taken per question on an average over 20 minute, 20 questions was the lowest. And the time taken per question for say RC or say VA or say DM, I need to expand because those are my weaknesses. In this scenario, 135 minutes. So barring the last half an hour, 135 minutes, that's 2 hours, 15 minutes, I devised. And if in case actually it did happen that somewhere in between you're like, I know, to getting too stuck, fed up with that one section, oh, what is happening? So just note down the time that was there and then switch to another one. So at the end of 135 minutes, my objective was that the amount of time that I had pre-decided that should be there, that this is the amount of time I've spent in DM, in verbal, and in quant. If I were to deviate from that, I need to have a very concrete reason, as in, like, say, everything else in verbal is done, only the poem is left. I've already decided, superseding everything, no poem whatsoever. So, done. In those scenarios, I might allow myself a say excuse out of the whole situation, but otherwise, it behooves me that if I stick to my original plan. Uh, this again, because everyone has been given so many mocks over a period of time, so I think everyone knows what their um, strengths and weaknesses are. Then I think then another thing is the scoring is very peculiar. So in that you have positive, negative, plus a third one in which if you go for less than 8 questions, more than 8 questions are unattempted, there's a 0.1, I think there's negative for that as well. This is again, no, this is again that whole sunk cost fallacy comes in, because then you keep on thinking, if I attempt this question and it turns out to be right, I get one step closer to not getting that unanswered questions for a negative as well. I personally stayed away from this. I never bothered about it. If you know the question, if you're confident enough, go for it. Otherwise, let that 0.1 go, because it again depends on the probability, right? If your probability is high enough, there's a certain places in which in certain questions you feel that, okay, except for, let's say, you have done 3/4 of the question, now you know, okay, last part almost sure, still not. So you have a sort of instinct in that sense, that whether or being 100% sure in a question, yet you will get attempted right. There's a certain instinct that everyone develops over a time of giving so many marks. So let that take over. But again, that sunk cost fallacy should never come in, that okay, just 8 questions left, 75 there, 67 I need to attempt. So let's go. Don't, not worth it. The next point I had was, yeah, formula. So ideally, I would not say these things, but the problem with that is it is objectively a more difficult paper than CAT. Now, in order to make any paper difficult, there are you think about it from the question paper, the person who's making the question, think about it from their perspective. You need to make a question paper difficult. There are two ways to do it: get a difficult question or get a time taking question. Like I said, because time is a constraint here. So that has more proclivity towards time taking questions. So be it in DI, be it in geometry, there's you have a lot more instances, even if you go through previous year questions, that there are a lot of instances of time taking questions which were not difficult, even say in LR or DI, but just too time taking. So for us, it's better to either steer away from them, steer clear from them, or come back to them, say, if you have the time in that last half an hour that I've mentioned. So that way, brushing up on the formula is important because it saves up a lot of time, and that has a good history of giving you questions which are really time taking. So God forbid if you get stuck on those. God forbid, like even in the last half an hour, you think about it, that's the best. Just leave it, or be refreshed with the formula. I think that is fine enough.
Okay, wow. Thank you so much for those, Archit. In fact, the sunk cost fallacy, very, first of all, like I have a this thing for fallacies. And the moment someone says fallacies, I get very attentive because it feels like something we can actually avoid because there's a
Mhm.
name for it, it's formalized, it's that common. So thanks for bringing that up. And of course, all the other helpful tips you've shared. For a moment, let's take a quick break sort of thing and take
Mhm.
up questions that our viewers may have, and then we'll
Mhm.
get back and I'll ask more questions about your prep and what to do in the next 2-3 days, things you did, all of that. So
Sure.
let me start with the first question first, which is there's someone who's so we'll spend 5 minutes here and by the dot and by the clock and we'll go back. Okay.
Okay.
So there's someone whose VRC score they say is fluctuating between 5 and 15. And they're curious how they can stabilize the score on D-Day. Any thoughts you have?
Mhm. Okay, so in this case, I would suggest have a better understanding of what part of VA and which type of RCs is where you are losing most. So I'll give you my personal example. I think that I have an issue with finding the odd one out. I'm good with the parajumbles. I'm
Mhm.
okay with summaries, but in VA, finding the odd one out is something that is my weakest section.
Mhm.
So if push comes to shove, I will avoid that. And even if I were to say answer a question of that sort, I would be 100. I would only go with the safest options, wherein I'm quite certain that I'm right.
Yeah.
Same for RCs. In my case, any abstract topic, dealing with art, culture, and all those things, I don't like it. Go for the scientific ones, fair enough.
Mhm.
So in that also, the whole reason I was mentioning that I will avoid the poem at all costs was the same thing, because I'm not sure of myself. I understand this is a weakness in my performance, so I will definitely try to avoid it as much as possible.
Got it. Are those the dogs there?
Yeah, they're on the street.
Not
Sorry.
much you can do about it. Okay, no worries. I'll Thanks for that. I'll take up the next question, which is there's someone who wants to know your sectional attempts. If
Okay.
you remember. Yeah.
Okay, that's I'm sorry, I don't remember it. I remember attempting somewhere around 50 to 53, one of those numbers.
Okay.
Of those, 23 were quant, that I remember, because that's the only section I looked up because I was confident in only that. Rest 30 will be here. See, anything I say would be just pure. I'm not 100% sure what my attempts were, but I remember 50 to 53 was the total number and 23 were quant.
Got it.
Rest 30 distribution, I don't know. Sorry.
Got it. Got it. No worries. Okay. So I'll take up the next question, which is what was your total raw score in that 2021?
Mm, mm, I 41 or 42, one
Okay.
of those things.
Got it.
Hmm.
Okay, then the next question is what was your mock score or scores in the previous year papers if you've taken them?
I honestly don't remember those. I really did not care about the mock scores essentially. My
Mhm.
entire objective of giving a mock was to figure out uh, what went wrong. That's it, honestly. So if I'm giving a mock, I just look at what went wrong. Whatever went right, if a question is marked right, if by mistake it's a tukka कि गलती से सही हो गया, then I look at it. Otherwise, if a question is attempted correct, I don't even look at it. I'm always focusing on A, if I missed out on a question, why would that have been avoided? B,
Mm.
if I did something wrong, why? Uh, Rest mock scores, honestly, I don't remember. I didn't look at the scores to be very honest because uh, it's like that, if you're like trading sometime or if you're in a casino or something, gambling, you get really flustered. It's not a good sign to have. So I really don't look at the scores, but I just look at what went wrong and not to do it again. Try not to do it. हो जाता है, but not to do it. Try not.
Awesome. This is just exactly what all the other toppers always advise others to do, which is don't pay attention to scores. But you're the first person who I've met who said that they didn't look at the scores only, and that sounds like a great idea because what better to not think about something than
Mhm.
to not just look at it itself. And of course, I had another question, but I forgot about it. I'll come back to it later. But I'll take up the next one, which is there's Mahima asking how to handle quants if you're not that good in it. You're asking the wrong guy because he's too good at it. How many should I attempt with how much accuracy in quants to reach the cutoffs at least?
I think I don't know the cutoff, but I think it's somewhere around 8 to 10. Uh, what I would suggest is there's this normal way in which I function is I categorize my questions into three types: A, B, and C. So part A is I look at the question. I know that if I pay attention, pay time to it, I'll be able to solve it. Done. So I look at it, I get to the question, I solve it, done and dusted. Part B, I know I can solve it. It's going to be a time taking endeavor. It might I might come back to it, I might not come back to it, depending upon how I perceive the rest of the paper. Third is difficult ones. Leave them. You don't need them in your life. You don't need the negativity. Let them go. Only and only if a situation occurs where you are left with time and you've gone through everything else, the questions of the B type, which you thought,
Hmm.
okay, no, I need to revisit.
Hmm.
Those are done, the type A's are done, type B's are done, and still you are left with time, which never
Hmm.
happens, by the way, but just fairy tale situation.
Right.
If it does, then you visit them, otherwise, let it go. There's no
Got it.
point hanging on to them.
Awesome. Okay. We'll go to the next question, which is okay, so we're already 5 minutes are up. So ideally,
Mhm,
we should go back to our conversation, which is what to do in the next 2-3 days. So
mhm,
Ridhima's question is up next, and there are more. Let me
mhm.
take them up in the next chunk of our live
Sure,
question.
sure.
Until then, tell us about maybe what you did 2-3 days before that last time, or what you think is a good thing to do in the last couple of 2-3 days.
Um, in that, decision making plays a big problem, big role. Essentially, it's a big problematic area. Primarily because critical reasoning and decision making, it's not something that it's very common in Indian education in total. I always try to get as much exposure in decision making as much I can. And like I said about the topics in quant and topics in verbal, uh, I tried to come up with a rough framework of what kind of decision making questions are there in terms of the dilemmas that they present. If you go through a good number of previous year questions itself, just don't, I'm not like see in the last 2 days, previous year's questions are going to be the only good only thing you need to refer to. I try to get a better sense of what type of dilemmas are there, what type of dilemmas in the case studies which they are coming, which I should try to attempt. The whole idea was that if it is like, imagine for a consulting interview, if you're doing guesstimates. So the first two things is the market sizing question kar lo. Like that's the way it goes. So if you know the market sizing part, वो question हो जाते हैं. In a similar way, I randomly tried. I tried just from myself to try to um, basically categorize the kind of conflicts and issues that I faced in decision making and get a rough framework out of it started. So when the last few days were there, I like last 2 3 days, I went back to it and just had a look at what should be done. Uh, One thing I remember is about the ethical dilemma, because the questions about ethical dilemma become very challenging. See, because when you're giving out an exam, we always assume everything is going to be very ideal, right? So an ethical dilemma question in decision making brings out that aspect of being practical over ideal. So that was something that I was very careful about, because I honestly, what is practical to me and ideal is a very subjective thing in my opinion. So I stay clear of it. So I try to get a better sense of decision making. Apart from that, give 2 3 4 marks. 2 days, 2 3 4 marks is enough, I think. I took a leave, I think, for from my office also on Friday. So Friday, Saturday gave marks, and the time I took on those mocks, essentially, what I did was I figured out the average time I take per question, and again I had to then prepare that whole कि 135 minutes का breakdown क्या होगा, because I believe that I need to play to my strengths and my weakness. I need to pay attention to them. So that 135 minutes distribution, I went there. I thought that might help in the last few days. Another one last thing. So
Yeah, please.
I need to give credit to my college friends. We
Okay.
have a ritual Saturday night. We scattered around the globe. So we all play together. We play Among Us. So I that helped ease a lot of tension, honestly speaking. And
Right.
Saturday night post 8, don't worry about it.
Mm.
Uh, I personally find no benefit in it, and that one activities, playing with friends, that I think is a lot of my nerves, and I think that helped somewhere along the line.
Okay, got it. Awesome. So it's important to relax basically,
Mhm.
and you kind of did it too well, it seems. Okay. Awesome. Then I'll take the next questions that we have. And I'll start with Ridhima's now, which is how do I ace decision making? I'm not able to maximize my score in DM section.
Mhm. um, like I said, try to categorize the dilemmas,
Yeah.
and get a very good understanding of few aspects of the questions, regarding, say, few questions which come about, say, legal troubles
Mm.
or expansion strategies, kind of those things. So, what is the ideal way that the test maker is looking for? So,
Okay.
whatever you find there usually works. I think two cases, if you're able to solve correctly, then cutoff is not that high. Then I think 8 marks is enough in DM. In most cases. So I
Okay.
think that should work.
Got it. Awesome. Then there's a big picture, broad strategy based question, which is A, what was your strategy? And B was, how did it help you? How much did it help you?
So I think it helped me a lot in the sense that in my attempts prior to 2021, I've always had a sectional issue. I was always able to get over the overall percentile, but again, the whole thing happened either verbal or either DM. Something used to get in the way.
Hmm.
So that way it helped, because see, like I like to play to my strengths. I get too engrossed in quants because I'm seeing that there's a direct correlation. The amount of time I spend there, the better marks I get. But that's not going to work in my favor. And That's why it happened that I stuck very closely. I was not. I was a bit fluid between the time I had to spend in DM and verbal, but
Mm.
for quant, the time that I had assigned, just that, leave it aside because there's again similar instinct in everyone that if I'm working in the section which is my strongest, I need to maximize it,
Yeah.
and that's a very like when you're solving it, and let's say that in the other sections you saw some scary questions, so that's an instinct कि यहाँ बढ़ा लो कि वहाँ भी होने वाली problem.
Uh,
Don't fall for that. I think that does not help. And that essentially happened with me in quant as well. I ended up, I think, not answering two questions. I was not sure geometry के थे, PMC के थे. सही था, answer सही था, but
mhm.
I didn't, डर लग रहा था मुझे.
Okay.
And the time got over. I was like, let's leave it. Let's focus on the other things. So that what it did end up
Sorry.
doing was, I remember this distinctly, is he at one point of time I changed all my answers for a set in DM. But I could do that only when after giving say about 3 or 4 minutes to the set, I was thinking about what to do. Just ऐसे बैठ के कुछ भी सोचा था. But
Mm.
it just certain aspect of the case stuck to me and I had to change all my answers.
Oh.
So, and they ended up being correct. So I remember this being the part that since I'm weak in DM, I need to give more time to it. And there's see, because imagine it this way: if those four questions, if that thing had not stuck, I did not think about it a lot.
Mhm.
4 marks I would have lost. Had said even if I would have gotten 4 more marks in quant, it would not have made any sense because I would not have cleared the sectional cutoff. So
Mm.
stick to that plan and be very aware that okay, everyone has strengths and weaknesses. In your weak places, if the average time given to a question needs to be higher than what you give to your strong suits, because that's how it's going to play out. Everyone is going to do the same thing.
Mm.
So that's very important in that sense.
Got it, got it. Thanks so much for sharing that. I'll take up the next question, which is someone asking, should we guess mark on just one option throughout a section in which we feel we are underperforming during the exam to at least help neutralize the unattempted negative marks? +1 minus 0.25 into 4 is equal to 0 negative.
So see, this works if your the underlying assumption is that there's a fair distribution in all the five options. So you have five options. You don't have, see, this is the thing, +1 minus 1 by 4. Okay. Now, if there were only four options like cat, you might neutralize it. Now you have five options. So essentially what's going to happen is one in five questions is going to be correct. Again, this is the underlying assumption being that there's a fair distribution amongst the options, which I don't think there is.
Right.
They might I don't know what the test makers employ as a way. They might have this thing on shuffle also. I'm not exactly sure about how they structure the paper. And since even in cat you get different sets, right? So I know that that might be employing something similar.
Mm.
But if you just do norm, even if you were to assume like that, so imagine if you attempt say 15 questions, you are getting three of them correct because it's one in five chances
Right.
minus zero point 0.5, right? So minus zero point 0.5 is minus 5, you're doing it. So that's going to minus 2. So that's going to be counterproductive. Plus, I don't agree with your underlying assumption. That people are not going to do that.
All right, okay. I'll go to the next question, which is how much time did you personally allot to all three sections?
Out of 135, I allotted, I think, 40 minutes to quant. Rest, I am left with 95. So for 95, I did about 50 minutes to verbal and rest for DM. But I was very sure that verbal, I'm going only for verbal ability. I'll be going like verbal ability, logical reasoning, decision making, and then RCs, because
Mm.
if they come up with two poems, if they come up with all arts related, that abstract topics, nah, I'm not going to attempt it. So that's my weak point. So that's going to be the last thing that I attempt.
Mm.
First, do go through this process and then come back for them. In the whole 95 minutes that I've allotted. But that 40 minutes, you don't need to deviate.
Got it, got it. All right, great. I'll go to the next one, which is what is the order in which you attempted all the sections? So you said first quant.
No, no. So it was a VA, VALR, then DM, then RC, then quant. No, quant se pehle DI, DI, and then quant in the last. And I think I did not use the 135 minutes. I got over in 2 hours because then honestly got scared of other things. I went back through the whole grind to look for the B type questions. That was ABC, the distinction that I made.
Yeah.
I went for those. Uh, then so I think I came back with like 3 or 4 questions in quant, one whole set that I readed in decision making. I think I did a couple of questions except for that set as well in decision making. What RC I still didn't. I was very scared honestly because XAT has the legacy of XAT. XAT verbal is was very daunting to me, so I didn't try to like wrestle a lot with it. Let
All
it
right.
go.
Okay. Great. Then I'll take up the next question, which is if we leave more than 8 questions, then the 0.1 for each question would be deducted from the total score or from any section.
I think it's total score because the 8 questions is also taken out of from your 75. They're not going it section wise. So I think it's the total score.
Got it. So there are 2 more questions. Let me take the shorter one first, which is how many XAT mocks did you take?
I forgot. I think more than I do not need more than 7 or 5 or 6 is more than enough. I think the thing is it depends on how well you prepared for CAT. If you have a good experience of CAT, then XAT is primarily where you need to know how to get the distribution of time. Otherwise, the concepts are same. It's just that XAT has a more inclination towards getting all the difficult questions of CAT. So the sets would be difficult. The quant questions will be time taking or difficult. Verbal, same thing. But in my opinion, in syllabus wise, it's quite similar in the structure. So I don't think that's going to be an issue.
Got it. Okay. How many questions had you attempted? What was the number you had shared earlier?
50, somewhere between 50 to 53.
All right. Okay. So next question is for someone who's only in the score range of 15 to 16 marks. What do you think they should do?
Figure out what to avoid. Don't go for what you need to do because see, what I've observed is that it's more to do with what you lose, which is worse, rather than working on what you obtain. So, for example, imagine if I'm not good with profit and loss, right? Now it will, and I'm making a lot of calculation mistakes in say percentages. Okay, it is better for me to since I already know the topic of percentages, it is more time efficient for me that I figure out what I'm doing wrong here rather than go and learn a new topic. Given the time sensitivity, 2 days left, I would suggest get a very good understanding of what not to do. So in that sense, then negatives that you're getting, that will be better. And then you can progress. I think that should have a good increase in your score. Hopefully.
Got it. All right. Okay. Thank you so much, Archit. This is very helpful. I'll go to the next question, which is what is the lowest percentiler in XLRI Jamshedpur that you wouldn't know right now? So I'll take the next question, which is our previous 6-year question papers enough to get a 95 percentile?
What you do with them is important, but I think yeah, they should suffice.
Okay. And how do you use past year papers in your prep?
DM, yeah, I try to make that framework. Verbal, again, avoid the poem. quant, it gives me a very good, essentially, previous year questions of quant gave me a very good understanding that XAT people are very, brazen in the fact that they can give you really questions where you have to go get down to literally, hit and trial. So
Mhm.
I was always aware that ऐसे question आ सकते हैं. It's going to take a lot of time. Just
Mhm.
look at it, leave it, even if there's a remote possibility of that happening.
Mhm.
So that helped me like get to other questions. So like I came back to such questions. I didn't initially spend a lot of time with it because there's also this effect, right? Once I'm done with the section, okay,
Mhm.
and I look at the time left, because how am I judging how much time I spent in a section is because I'm looking at the remaining time.
Right.
So if that goes overboard, high ram time zyada ho gaya. Uh, the-
Huh.
You're in that in a very stressed environment anyway. So
Yeah.
in that sense, I just like leave it. Whatever is causing you any kind of trouble, leave it.
Mhm.
Get the essentials first, and then come back for those.
Got it. Fair enough, Archit. I'll take up the next question, which is someone who's curious about your CAT percentile.
Last year, okay, so I was going through just recovered from COVID, so I didn't study before that, so I didn't score well. I was at 97.85, yeah, last year.
Got it. Got it. Okay. What's your accuracy? My accuracy is stuck between 60 to 70. What to do?
60 to 70. See, accuracy can be improved by just not answering less questions. Accuracy is basically number correct answers upon total answers, right? So reduce the total answers. In the shorter time frame, I think that's the best way to go about it. Uh, it gives you a very good idea of how much you're going to score. It helps in the sense that you get to know कि cutoff के लिए क्या करना है. Correct. So you then make, even if you are say going for the questions you're not 100% sure, but you're just like कि चलो इस पे तो I am more confident than other. You make better choices there because again because of the whole practice that you've been doing, you have a good instinct set up कि हाँ इस topic में मैं अच्छा हूँ ऐसा कर. So in that sense, you make better decisions. But for to improve the accuracy, yeah, have strengths and weaknesses. Just get to know, be accepting of them, and stick to them.
Hmm. Got it. Awesome. Okay, Archit. Let's go to the next question, which is someone who's scoring almost about 25, excluding GK. What should I expect?
Um, if you plan well, expect a better score because if you're not nervous, you tend to perform better if you're well planned about it.
Hmm.
And I think that worked out last time in my favor.
Got it. What is the ideal accuracy required to clear the cutoff?
It's a very section specific scenario, but I think anything over 70% should work well
Mhm.
because it's one third of it is right. So depends on the number of questions you're attempting as well. But if say it's plus one and minus 0.5, right? So one third of them are going. So then you need to figure out what is the actual score that is left. In that
Mm.
sense, 70% I should think across the board should work well.
Oh,
Mm, yeah, I think 70% should be fine.
got it. There's someone who's saying if like their surprise 97 percentile is bad for you, but you're are you a gem, Archit? Yeah,
Yes.
it's very bad for gems. Okay. All right. Next
For
question.
I'll just
Yeah,
interject here. Sorry to interrupt you.
yeah.
See, percentile is good or percentile is bad. I'll be very honest. I don't have a very good profile. My college score is not nice. My 12th score is not nice. So I have different strengths and weaknesses. You have different strengths and weaknesses. No need to compare, please. Okay. So to stop that repetition is never going to help you. So stop worrying about that.
Got it. Got it. All right. Okay. So next question, Archit, for you is how much time should be devoted to each section ideally?
I would say figure it out yourself. Again, depends on person to person. Uh, Ideally, 165 questions, 75, 165 minutes, 75 questions, 2.2, 2 minutes, 12 seconds. Doesn't happen. And section wise, type of question wise, there's just too many branches which you need to figure out where you work well, where you don't work well. Uh, I would suggest just for example, if you have 135, I did it in nine. I tried initially when I was trying to figure out the time distribution. I did it in 4-3-2. 4 is to 3 is to 2. And the four, essentially 60, 45, and 30. That didn't work that way, but that's how I started. And 60, 45, 30, I went by the number of the duration I took on an average in the section. So since 135 is a multiple of 9, so 432, then 60, 45, and 30, because he said DM, verbal, and quant. Then I had to make adjustments later on, but that is how I began the exercise of figuring out how much time I should spend. And there's no right or wrong answer, whatever works for everyone. I'm just telling what I did.
Very helpful. Thanks for that. Very rigorous also, Archit. This is the first time we've had someone who's like broken things down in such detail with such rigor. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
I'll go to the next question, which is say I score around, so someone say I score around 15 in VALR, 14 in DM, and only 8 or 9 in QADI. Is there any chance of XLRI Jamshedpur?
Yes, depend. I think, see, 14, 14, 15, and 8, right? Yeah, so 37 is 37 qualifies you for an interview. So there are a lot of other factors that pour in when interview comes in. So that is just a ticket to the interview. And primarily, honestly speaking, I don't think it makes any kind of difference uh, once the interview starts that what you scored. It makes absolutely no difference. So just even if you see, I would not say go as far as to you saying that just get the basic cutoff clear, but don't think that a good percentile is everything that you need to get into XLRI.
Okay. Next question is, does XLRI offer profile-based admission like SPGen does?
I don't think so. Any college except for SPGen gives out profile-based calls.
Yep. We'll take the next one, which is, can we convert XLRI Jamshedpur BM at 95 percentile with good interview and 90 plus acads? What do you think?
I think so. Yeah, that should work if you have, especially if you have work experience and a non-engineer. Yeah, definitely, almost a cakewalk.
Got it. Also, same person asking next question, is it advisable to attempt all 21 in DM?
No. It's not advisable to attempt all the questions in any section. Be very wary of the fact that okay, it's similar to when you I tried a bit of my hand in stock market. I tried to learn about stock market, how to do trading. And one of the first few things which I found really poignant in OMETs, in the management interest tests, is they always say that it is more important to protect your capital rather than earn profits. The same principle is here, applied here. It's better to know what not to do. Again, I'm not saying the other part is not important, but if push come to shove, I feel it's better to know what not to do rather than know what to do. Again, personal opinion, take it with a pinch of salt. Sorry.
Oh, sure. No, of course, we've invited you for a personal opinion, Archit, so it's welcome. All right, so we've exhausted the live questions as of now. If you guys, viewers, if you have more questions, please shoot them in the chat. We'll take them up. And for whatever little time we have left, Archit, I want to, I have a couple of questions, but okay, so we have a live question. Let's take that first and we'll go back. which
Mhm.
is what strategy to follow if someone is not confident about their quant section in the next 2 days.
Um, Go through the formulae, and so in quant, I will. This is a personal pet peeve, which is geometry has just too many formula. नहीं याद रहते. Honestly speaking, it's too boring, too exhaustive, and very frustrating. I would rather suggest whenever I approach geometry is say have a good hand on the basics, say all your theorems and your congruency and similarity stuff like that. Then in quant, uh, get a hold of what you do nice well. For example, say out of TSD and averages. And so, for example, if you're doing allegations and averages, if the cross method works well for you, good for you. LCM work for you, whatever works well for you. Get that thing straightened out and figure out what are the regions which you completely need to avoid, come what may. So, like I said, I had two more questions which I could have attempted in quant, but again, probability, पता नहीं क्या होगा. I
Hmm.
was right although, but ठीक है मैंने छोड़ दिया. So
Hmm.
the same situation happens. Get a good understanding. Just go through your past marks and figure out whether see a lot of things which I've seen for people who struggle at quants is that don't equate calculation mistake with not knowing a concept because those are two very different issues that you're facing. So
Hmm.
if it's a calculation mistake, which means you just need to be more careful and invest more time in the question so that you don't make a calculation mistake. That's fair enough. But if you don't know a concept, then you need to go and study and practice, and which is a time-taking exercise. If you have that figured well, then I think quant works for you. And for
Hmm.
that, especially hit and trial, a few questions can come where hit and trials work. So don't get stuck that if you come to a point where you see यार hit and trial करना पड़ेगा तो कुछ तो गड़बड़ हुई है. It's not necessary. That questions are like that. They uh, are going to be very exploitative in nature to uh, get you to go through the worst case scenario and then come to the answer. So
Hmm.
it's possible. So don't worry about that.
Got it, got it. Awesome, thanks for that. I'll take up the next one, which is what do you think is the least score to get into XLRI Jamshedpur?
I honestly cannot comment on that. I think 32, 33 should work, but I think then if that is the case, then you need to be like a non-engineer girl with work X. So like you have to take all the other with a good interview as well. So like you have to take all the other parametrics well, so that
Mhm.
you get in.
Got it. Okay. Approximately, what do you think is the VRC cutoff for XLRI BM male engineer?
So cutoff is same for everyone, which is eight, somewhere between 8 to 10. It might slip, I think, but 8 to 10 is the general cutoff. Uh, Go with the mindset that 8 to 10 is going to be the general cutoff everywhere. Take it to be 10, 10, 10. So that's what you need to do. For general BMC, once you qualify, then they just take the total score. So forget about the verbal part because you need to figure out on maximizing the total. So in the weaker sections, you need to get over the hump. The other ones is maximize the total because after that, I might be wrong here, but I don't think so that they consider the sectional scenario after the interviews. And for the final selection, they look at the total score, I think.
Got it. Also, I had a question. Archit, you said you spend about 40, 45, 50 minutes per section. So, does this happen all at one stretch, or do you do like a round one, round two thing, even for sections?
Yeah, so I do it in the sense that ABC thing that I was talking about.
Yeah.
So the first type of questions I visit.
Just a sec. If you're someone who doesn't know what this ABC approach is, instead of having Archit repeat it, you could just look it up. We have another video on Inside Time. It's a 4-minute video. It's been explained very well, so you can visit it. Okay, yeah, Archit.
Okay, so in the ABC scenario, I figure out. I'm always looking at the timer to figure out how much time I'm consuming.
Hmm.
So towards the end of it, my goal is that when that whole 135 minutes are done, uh, the amount of time that I've pre-planned is what I've spent. Upar niche, I need to know the reasons for that. This is the reason why I chose not to spend the allocated time in that particular section.
Got it. Okay. So let's go to the next one, Archit, which is Abhishek asking. So I'll tell you his profile. He has 58% in class 10th. He does not have any work experience. And he's curious, what do you think his chances are of converting XLRI if he gets a really good percentile on that?
Uh, I the You have a very good chance, by the way. For more confidence into this topic, I'm sorry, I'm forgetting the name of the man, but there's a very influential person. He's an NIFT graduate who went to XLRI HR, and he has a brilliant post on LinkedIn where he tells his whole journey, wherein what the examiners, the interviewers actually asked him why he has, says he was a 6 pointer in college, why he has that. He had a 1 hour interview. As per that, I'm going by the LinkedIn post. I'm sorry, I'm forgetting the candidate's name. He has a beautiful story about it, and he is a very accomplished person. It's just that he has low marks. You need to have a good reason about that. As long as that's there, you're able to justify, stand your ground rationally. I think it's all well and good enough. That one post, I'm sorry, I can't. That name has slipped my mind, but that should give you a lot. It gave me a lot of hope that okay, if you are able to stand your ground, there's no issue in that, and they will ask you about it. You need to have a good answer, prepared well enough, so that you're able to defend it.
Also, do you remember what they said when they were asked this question? Did they
Uh,
mention?
they said something along the lines of that they were preoccupied with other responsibilities. And I think the person in question represented India somewhere.
Okay, okay, okay.
And he essentially said that, he had a few startups, he had other things to look after. So he was very candid about it. And even as far as the LinkedIn post, I remember he says that he told the interviewers as well that they were the first people who actually said that, why did you score so less? Others were just repeating of that fact. The XLRI people were the first ones to ask him point blank, so that they gave a good space for the person to explain himself. And I think you need to be prepared for that. So if you have a good answer for that, that that should work well enough. If
Got
the
it, got
other
it.
interview goes well, other
Yeah,
part.
yeah, yeah. Got it. It's just that like not everyone has done something at the India level and all of that. It's usually because people are not serious about their acads in college.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, but your larger point about having a solid reason
Mm-hmm.
could actually work. In fact, I'd spoken with someone who was an admissions counselor, and they said that it's okay to not have your life figured out at that point. When I was in college, I didn't know that I'll get an admission based on these marks. So I didn't focus on them. They were not a priority. But I don't know if you guys can say it out loud or if I should say it out loud in interviews. And maybe we'll do another webinar on this. But for now, your main point about like having a solid reason
Mm-hmm.
makes sense. Yeah, thanks for that. Okay, Archit, I'll take the next question, which is what is your score out of 70? What was your score again? 51, 52, you said?
No, that was my attempt.
Okay,
41 or 43. One of those two.
okay, all right, okay. Next is okay, wait. 10th, someone has 67%
Mm-hmm.
profile. 12, they have 64%. They did a BCom and they have 77%. Do you think there's a possibility they can crack XLRI?
Yes, for sure.
Okay.
There's nothing that can see. Don't put yourself down so much. There's possibilities are endless, and actually you can just go on and say that you became more serious over time. So that reflects well in your acads, and you can actually go ahead and say that over a period of time you have acquired a good amount of experience, maturity, and therefore you will not take the opportunity you're presented at the college for granted. So I think that should work.
Pretty good. Awesome. Okay. Next is someone whose mock scores are fluctuating a lot. How to stabilize the scores on actual day?
Figure out what not to do. Avoid the potholes.
Got it. So next question, how to do in verbal section? How to do verbal section? Please give some tips.
Again, figure out your strengths and weaknesses. Avoid everything you feel is at any point of time going to mess things up.
Got it. Are there male non-engineers who converted XLRI Jamshedpur HR at 92 percentile? Do you know someone like that? No?
I don't know.
Last day, okay. Raw score needed for 99 percentile in XAT.
34 or no, 36 or 37, I think. Not sure. 36 or 37. You guys have a good list of on it inside IAM, so I think that should help. That's a better source than me telling
Go
that,
to
honestly.
go to insideiam.com. You get everything, guys. We have everything for you. Okay. Next is VALR and DM D-Day strategy. I haven't prepared much for that. If I keep a clear mind, can I score a 99?
Yeah, you can. VA and LR again, for DM, get a bit of exercise. For LR, I think by now you would have a good experience about what to avoid, what not to avoid. For example, like games and tournaments, I don't like, so I avoid them. Let them out of the way. So that way, if you get what to avoid, then I think that knowing what to avoid essentially improves your accuracy quite a lot. So that should work well. In that scenario, even if you end up at a point where you feel that your attempts are very low, if you go for a few risky attempts, you'll make better decisions in those, and essentially end up answering only those where you have a good probability of being right. So that
Mm.
increases your probability of scores. Like that increases your score essentially.
Got it. Awesome. Next question is there is someone who scored a 95 percentile in DILR on CAT and 50 percentile in CAT QA. So now they're asking, should I prefer to solve DI questions to clear the QA DI cutoffs?
Yes, definitely, because that is basically you're playing to your strengths.
Right.
If this thing, if the people who are making the XAT paper, they're giving you an option, why not take it to your advantage? And that's a absolutely good way to do about it. One caveat I will add here is if you find a difficult DI set, even though if you think that you're not good in quants, go for the easy quant ones first. Just because you believe that you are good in DI does not mean that you should avoid this thing, because it boils down to the amount of time you have spent for each question.
Right.
So easy quant questions are better than that, and you always have at least like 5 6 to 5 to honge honge, right? So
Right.
attempt those 5 6 and come back to DI, no problem. They are
Right.
giving you an option, use it to your advantage.
Awesome. So we'll take one more question, Archit, which
Mhm.
is there's someone who's a non-engineer female, and they're wondering how many marks in QA minimum are needed to get a call for HRM.
Whatever the cutoff is, I think it's for HRM, I think it is 6 or 6.5 if I'm not wrong, but check on the website. Not a
Yeah,
good source for
in
this.
fact, we have all this on insideiam.com. To be very honest, you can go check it out here. It's just like it's not on video. You'll have to do a Google search for it.
Mhm.
Okay, and then 1 minute to go. And final question: how are you preparing for the essay writing and GK? How are you attempting it? Any tips around that?
So GK, I avoid GK entirely because it comes into play when you are there, when you have the interview as well. So I personally don't prepare for GK at all. For
Right.
essay writing, I do prepare because I think, as far as I've read, because essay writing has been reintroduced. So
Mm.
in the previous thing, I think previous when it was on, I think the situation was that you can essentially they might question you on that on the interview, that why you wrote this in the essay. So I am figuring out how to structure what's the basic structure of the essay, and
Mm.
I think that should be more than enough, because 25 minutes GK is a 5 minute section. You don't spend more than that. Either you know the answer or you don't. So rest is going to be on essay. So you have a good healthy bit of time. Typing is not going to be an issue anyway. So that's the only thing left.
Awesome. So next question is about again guess marking, which you've already spoken about. So if you're curious about it, go back to the video. The short answer is don't. Okay. All right then. So there are a couple more questions for you, Archit, which is they pertain to the interview and how you would take some more questions. But I think it'll be a good time to do another webinar on it, specifically for the interview, and just focus on that right now, the exam, because it's 2 days away. And that's what this webinar for. And I hope this was hopeful, helpful. But before we say bye-bye, Archit, if you have any final tips, short tips, summary, anything that you want people to really take care of on D-Day, please go ahead.
Last day, don't, towards the end of the night, don't stress about it, please. If you have good friends, play Among Us. That's a tested trip, I can say, but don't stress about
Awesome. Okay, thank you so
it.
much. Thanks so much, Archit. This was lovely, wonderful, and your answers were very, very helpful. We'll invite you again and we'll have more questions for you. All the best to everyone who's taking XAT this time, and have a good night. Bye-bye.
Thank you for having me. It's been lovely. Good night. All the best, everyone.